Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. Check the left phone for full evacuation on this side. They're pulling them out.
10-1-1, advise ready for camp.
Gun!
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Chuck. Tom's not here today. Unfortunately, we just got a lot of things going on the plate, but we do have someone who we've been looking forward to. His name is Thom Shea, and he is a United States Navy SEAL. He trains the leaders who you want to lead during chaos. Tom, how are you?
Hey, brother. Nice being here.
Hey, nice to have you on. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yep.
So you're a Navy SEAL. You train leaders who you want to lead during chaos through unbreakable leadership and a bunch of other really awesome things. So it seems like you're really into a lot of the health and wellness stuff and your promises to the baseline principles, special operations teams that are elite. You're focused on mastery of individual and team performance. Seems like you teach a lot of the team skills and team building stuff. And yeah, is that everything that you learned from the Navy SEALs?
I always think it's funny. I try to make it clear on social media, and I give up.
Yeah.
When you try to do that, and it's not a gift to make copy look pretty. So. Yeah, I was in the SEAL teams for 23 years, and I retired about 10 years ago. And jumping into social media when you were off the grid forever and trying to make that business model, it wasn't my forte. So one thing that I knew really well was how to make complex things simple and how to organize teams around very complex things that become executable. So
Right.
created a company that does that.
That's really awesome. I mean, it takes that acronym from the Marine Corps or the military in general. Simple, stupid. Make it Marine proof. And I like that because there are so many things that are just so complicated, overly complicated, and a good leader has to be able to distinguish that and to be able to pull those pieces out, to teach it to the other people, to make it digestible and to make it understandable for the masses and to make them better at what they're doing and to one day be a great leader themselves. I think that's awesome. Wow.
Yep.
So I know we kind of just jumped right in straight to your company, Navy SEAL, but we'd like to take a time on this podcast to really discuss how you got into not just the military, but and special warfare and special forces and all that stuff. So can you bring us back to the Tom at a young age? What caused that spark for service?
Well, I don't think it was the spark for service. Even when I was in, I never felt I was serving anything. Because the country's never in Afghanistan and the president's never there, and all the people you think you serve are back home doing something else.
Right.
I grew up. I think I grew up in the greatest period of time in the late 70s and 80s, going through high school in the mid 80s. You could do anything you wanted. I think the horizon was whatever the hell you wanted to do, and my parents were awesome because they gave me freedom to screw up, and they didn't, have reins on me like most parents do now.
Right.
And I grew up kind of in a military family. I come from the Custer line, back even to the Revolutionary War. Not that it meant anything to me then, but my dad was an Academy grad or a West Point grad. And I wanted to go to West Point. And we could probably make a cool story out of that. I went to West Point and failed out my third year.
Ooh.
And that go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm like, that's just, you're there for 3 years. What happened?
I got young kids get disillusioned. Do you know what I mean? That's probably why so many kids fail out of SEAL training.
Probably.
It was, I thought it was going to be other than it was. And I wanted to be a warrior. I grew up hunting. I grew up outside. I grew up in the culture of, everybody that was around us constantly were Vietnam vets. And man, I'm going to go to West Point. And it wasn't that for me. And I played football for 3 years and did really well there. And I hit a bottom, and and as an adult looking back, I just gave up on studying. When you give up on studying, what happens? You flunk,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that really gave me more freedom, because once you're at the bottom, bro, either in this probably venue, either you commit suicide or you do whatever the hell you want to do,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And I wasn't ever interested in offing myself. So I had some guys pick me up, meaning some mentors that were ex-SEALs. And they're like, bro, you wanted to be a warrior. Why don't you go in the SEAL teams? I'm like, man, I
Right.
can't swim. Dude, I can't swim. They're like, who cares? You can do anything if you're committed, which the best lesson in the world, commit before you know, and then you'll figure it out or die. And so I screwed around a little bit, chased some girls, hit another rock bottom. I'm like, man, I'm just going to go and do something that seems overwhelming. I'm going to go in the SEAL teams. And that's probably the genesis of the whole nightmarish.
Oh, wow. So you're like, you're playing football for West Point. This isn't something that you want to do. It's not something that's capturing your energy, and you're just like,
Mm-mm.
all right, well, I'm done. Chase some
Yep.
girls, and then you're like, this is my rock bottom. I'm gonna
Yep.
join the SEAL teams.
Yeah. Literally, that's how my brain looked at it.
That's
And I can't see
crazy.
my parents were very supportive. They're like, man, you already failed one time. Why are you going to do something even harder? I just couldn't
But
get out of my
you're
head.
like,
I tried for a year to get it
yeah.
out of my head, and it resided there. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. That was
You're like,
before
it's
the
hard.
internet. Nobody knew anything
Right.
about it. There were no
Right.
books out,
Mm-mm. You're like, it's harder, but is it though? Like, there's some portions of your brain that are like, that's just tough. That's just difficult. That's painful. And there's other parts you're like, that's hard, like mentally draining. Not to say that SEAL stuff isn't mentally draining, because it definitely is. It's
Yep.
very difficult. It's probably one of the hardest trainings that you can do. But for the way that it seems like your brain's almost working, is that the bookwork stuff was not the stuff that you wanted to do. You wanted to do the cool hands-on shit, to get outside, feel everything, and that's what really engages you. Even though
Yep.
it's difficult and taxing and hard, that's what keeps your interest. And I think that's just that's amazing, the way that your brain works like that. And it's crazy hard. Like, that's
Yeah. I knew nothing about it. I mean, the literature was what the
wow.
Navy recruiter gave you. The only book that I had read after I committed, I read Marcinko's book, and that
Okay.
doesn't tell you anything. It's
Mm-mm.
just, hey, everything's cool, and you get drunk and you kill people, bro. It has nothing to do with that. You know what I mean? And so then the long journey to
Right.
make it was, I'd already learned how to not quit. By
Mhm.
quitting, you learn how not to quit. Just don't quit. You know what
Right.
happens when you quit? Nothing.
Mhm.
You just go back home, and you go to zero again if you
Right.
quit. I'm like, well, I'm never going to quit again. And people say that, but then they get 1,000 reasons to quit, and they pick one, which was a
Yeah.
beautiful conversation. I think Buds is still the only program, because I did tons of them, that if you're not going to quit, you'll make it through. And it's
Really?
based on getting rid of quitters. Like Draper Kaufman, the guy who wrote the
Mhm.
Hell Week curriculum in World War II, he just wanted to get rid of quitters. I'm just going to put a Hell Week together to get rid of everybody who's going to talk themselves out of this. And then you can train anybody who's not a quitter. If you're not a quitter, you can learn anything. And that's the genesis of the SEAL teams.
I love
Just get
that.
rid of quitters. So, yeah.
that makes it so simple. Like if you just think about it and you break it all down, and I kind of see how your training goes, and you break everything down to the most simplest form. That is the most simplest form right there. That
That's it.
explanation.
Yep.
And it's so simple, and it almost is like, oh, that's easy. Like it's not easy, but if you tell your brain you're going to do it,
conversation
you
in the
can do
SEAL
it.
teams is simple but not easy.
Yeah.
We're going to do 1,000 push-ups. Hey, it's simple in concept, but bro, it's not going to be easy, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
The only easy day was yesterday, right?
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
over, man. Yeah. Yep.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
So
and I think that
then the fun,
uh-huh.
there's two of us in the history of SEAL teams that have done more or in more than 4 hell weeks. Another guy, I can't remember his name all of a sudden. So I went into SEAL training, started out class 195, and then hell week was week 6. It's now week 5. Doesn't change it, but I went into hell week and I got a concussion and got rolled. I've already hit bottom. I'm like, okay, I can start over. And they're like, hey, you want to start over? I'm like, what do you mean start over? You got to start over day 1. I'm like, oh my God, I got to do all that again. And we'd already gotten rid of 50% of the class. I'm like, man, I don't know if I can start over. Well, I've already started over. That's how my brain looked at it. I've already figured out how to start over. And so I started over class 196, and I thought it was going to be the same. It wasn't even close to being the same. And same instructors, different students, and we got beat horribly different in that class. Made it to hell week again and dislocated my shoulder. I'm like, oh my God. And then, imagine all the reasons not to stay. This isn't for you. God's telling you not to be here. You go home. I went home with my parents. They're like, Tommy, you shouldn't do this anymore. You're going to hurt yourself. And nobody's supportive. When you hit bottom, nobody says, get back on the horse, except the 2 guys that were ex-UDT and SEALs. One guy was a guy named Pat Tomlinson, was on Iwo Jima as a SEAL.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, dude, start over. I'm like, Pat, you don't understand. He goes, I do understand. You could quit or you could start over. I'm like, damn, it can't be that simple. He goes, it is. Life is that way. So I'm like, damn, I got to recover. I don't know if I can recover from a dislocated shoulder.
Right.
And so they allowed me a class 197. They said, hey, skip this class, see if you can recover. And I recovered, went into class 198 and made it to hell week again and got pneumonia.
Oh,
and I'm
on.
like, man, I really got down on myself. I got down on myself because I left hell week on Wednesday and I had to start again Monday. Normally there's a 2-week break. I'm like, bro, I got pneumonia. I'm like, I can't even pass the test. They're like, you don't even have to pass the entrance test. Just come on day 1 because we know you're not going to quit. Hopefully you'll recover from pneumonia. I'm like, and I was a corpsman. I'm like, you don't recover, bro. And I failed everything. I got beat, fail, beat, fail, beat. I could pass the academics, but I could hardly even PT. Made it to hell week again. And they're like, if you make it to Wednesday night, midnight, we'll roll you forward. And we're walking to chow Wednesday night after starting on Sunday in my 4th hell week. And I passed out and woke up in the hospital. And a guy named Mike Mayer came to the hospital and said, hey, we can't let you stay. It's not a matter of quitting or not. You have scar tissue in your lungs. You're out. I'm like, what the hell? And so I was kicked out of training. And so I went back to Pat Tomlinson, the guy that was on EWO, and told him what happened. And he goes, what are you going to do? I said, well, I got to stay out for 2 years. And he goes, who said you have to stay out for 2 years? The Navy says I have to stay out for 2 years. He goes, fuck the Navy. I said, I don't know how to get back in. He goes, figure out a way to get back in. And then I was, for 2 months, I was like, man, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to go into my 5th one, or even stay out for 2 years and try again? I should just punch out of the
You've already come this far.
Well, yeah, your brain doesn't feel that way. It's like it doesn't like it. You know what I mean?
No.
And so I figured out if I got the admiral of the hospital, I worked at a hospital in San Diego, Naval Hospital. If I sit in his office with a request shit to go back. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay.
Probably strike that part.
15:30.
So I ended up going to the admiral's office every day I was at work with a request chit. So for 9 months, I sat in his office. He said no. He finally came out and said, the Navy won't let you go for 2 years. Please, or not please, but you can't come back to my office. I order you not to come back. So I went back the next day. He goes, if you come back again, I'm going to take your rank because you're disobeying a direct order. So I came back on Monday and I had an admiral's mast and I went from E4 to E3.
Oh, they weren't kidding.
No, they like, don't come to my fucking office, bro. And I'm like, I'm still going to come. So I took a week off. I actually called Pat Tomlinson. I'm like, dude, I just got demoted. He goes, so what?
This is the most
worst
SEAL
thing
shit
that
I've
can
ever heard of.
I mean, you could just get kicked out. I'm like, I said, maybe that would be better than stay in. Who knows? And so I went back in and he wouldn't even look at the chit. He couldn't even look at me in the eye, which was funny.
Oh my gosh.
And he came out on a Friday, walked over to me now 9 months out of training, came over, signed the chit. And he said, you're either the dumbest guy or you're meant to be there. So here, go back. And so I ended up back on Monday because I knew how to check in and check out, and started class 207 9 months after I left, which was cool. Everybody knew me, but not in a good way, you know?
Right.
But we started with 111 kids and graduated 11.
Oh, whoa,
And
that's a big.
Still was not
attrition.
easy. Holy Christ, it was not easy.
And you did this 5 times. You've made it through to Hell Week 5 times.
Learned a lot about myself.
I bet.
I learned stop competing for number one. Nobody cares who's number one. Because I was always trying to win.
Finish. Yeah.
And one of the guy named Mike Mayer looked at me and said, I don't remember who is number one in my class, by the way.
Right.
I'm like, God, good point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You know, you just get through the training, learn what you got to learn, and then go better your team. You know, go better, you know, the platoon or whatever you're going into. You know, I totally get that, and honestly, that's probably the most Navy SEAL way to get back into training. What's happened, because you guys are seriously tough. Like, you guys deal with some crazy things that I can only, like, my mind can't comprehend some of the things that you guys have done. And to be knocked down that many times, to get back up, and to even be threatened with losing your rank, getting a reduction in rank, and still pushing forward, that is the most Navy SEAL shit I've ever heard of. That's crazy. That's awesome.
I think it paid dividends to fail. You know, if you can't recover from failure, you're stuck, because you're gonna fail at everything you do until you win. And that became a mantra of mine.
Right.
Learn by failing, push until it breaks, learn how not to break it, and then start over. And some things will break no matter how great you are, but what you do after it breaks is more important. And but that became the lifestyle of, you know, commit, go for it, recover, start over, and it's a great lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it breaks it down, makes it easy to follow, makes it simple. It's just, hey, this is simple, life's simple. Like, this is what you got to do.
Yep.
And it's a great way to, it's a great philosophy, a great way to look at things.
And you can teach it, by the way. It's one thing that you can teach, because everybody falls apart. Just give
100%.
somebody an experience and you'll see them unravel. as opposed to do things perfectly. Shit, man, I don't know how I've never done anything perfectly. So if I have to start out by doing it perfect to get in the club, I probably won't be in any club. And,
Right.
people learn really well from failing if you can permit them to fail. And all SEAL training post, even in buds, is failing. Like they never let you win in training ever. You never win.
Right.
If things
Makes
are
sense.
going well, those 3 guys are dead. Figure out how to do it without, okay, everything. You're a great leader. Good. You're dead. Let the guys figure it out without you. And so everything's
Right.
always unraveling, which then when you translate it to combat is everything unravels in combat. Can you keep
Right.
doing simple things with your leg blown off, with guys dead, without ammo, whatever that case is? Can you keep fighting? Like Marcus Luttrell says, stay in the fight.
Right.
Because the enemy does not want to stay in the fight. If you stay in longer, then you'll win,
Yeah, that's very interesting, and that's a great mindset. And wow, that's really really amazing. After making it through your 5th week, you're like, fuck, finally I made it. What's the next chapter like? Going into all that, you must have had such a sigh of relief, but at the same time, you're like, man, this is ramping back up. It's about to get really difficult because you know it's tough training. It's not easy. And the next year, maybe next 2 years is going to be really difficult, really tough with a lot of follow-on schools.
Well, I think that wasn't even a chapter. I think that was the intro to the book. You know what I mean? It wasn't an official chapter. So since I was a corpsman, I got to go to the SF 18 Delta course, which was at
Okay.
Bragg. And that was like 11-month long course. So I didn't immediately go to the SEAL teams. And that was great learning. And you want to learn about medicine without, lawyers and restrictions. 18 Delta corpsmen or medics know a lot about trauma and emergency medicine. And so it was a
Right.
great 11 months out of my life.
So they leaned
And then,
right into the corpsman stuff right out of the gate. They're like, hey, he's going to be a corpsman for us. And
graduate, 2 weeks off, go to 18 Delta,
okay.
which is you don't get any time off. Ready, go.
Right.
Not conducive to marriage, but that's another story. That's another chapter.
100%.
And so I check into my alma mater team was SEAL Team 2, and that's on the East Coast. So I check into SEAL Team 2, I think in 97, 96, can't remember. And then it's a long journey to get your trident. Then it was. So I was at the team for about 13 months before I pinned on the gold trident. And you just go from one training to the other, to the other, to the other. And, you get weekends off, and
Right.
theoretically you get them off. And then it's just getting into the rhythm of being a team guy, which is train, deal with each other, and train and learn how to function as a team, which is the hardest thing in the world, is functioning as a team. And that mantra that still I think is unique to the SEAL teams is team first over everything else.
Okay.
And it ends up being the lifestyle that if you want to stay in it will give you back tenfold of what you put in.
Okay.
And then go on deployment. So the cycle is about 18 or 16 to 18 months of training. Then you go on a 6-month deployment. I did 3 deployments at SEAL Team 2.
Wow.
And and those are great chapters. So I saw we rescued the U.S. ambassador in Macedonia when Kosovo kicked off. A guy named Christopher Hill. As a new guy, a embassy rescue is awesome because you never know what the hell's going on.
Right.
And so I saw combat the first deployment, and then I did a strike platoon on a carrier second deployment where we took down ships in the Gulf for 6 months. And that was wizard, flying in, boating in, doing sniper overwatch on a helo, and everything is constantly out of control.
Oh, I bet.
And then I went back in my final deployment at Team 2 to Kosovo to do reconnaissance. So 6-day in the field, like Ranger company reconnaissance, where you're living out of your ruck. And I'm like, man, I didn't want to do this. Why the hell are we doing this? I thought we were going to sleep in hotels, you know. It wasn't the case. So that's probably chapter 1 is SEAL Team 2 and learning how to be a team guy and operating 270 days a year. You're training or deploying.
Right.
And so I think it was 5 years of that, 5.5 years. And so at the end of chapter 1, I'm like, I'm done. I had 2 kids, never saw them, had a wife that was cool, always on vacation. So, and I was about ready to put in my I'm done request shit. Like I just want out because I feel like I'm afraid, and you know, burning candle at both ends is cool when you watch it, but when you're doing it, you have nothing left, you know?
Right.
And a guy named Ryan Zinke, who's a congressman now, was my XO. And I'm like, bro, I'm out. He goes, hey, why are you out? Why don't you go to Team 6? And I'm like, fuck, I'm never home now. I'm never going to be home again. And I saw combat 3 times and they weren't doing anything at the time. And I said, I got orders here to SBU, which is Special Boat Unit. I'm like, I'm not going to go be a corpsman for boats. And he goes, why don't you go to Buds as an instructor? I'm like, what authority do you have? He goes, well, I'm going to be the XO. I have all the authority in the world. I said, okay, it's Friday. On Monday, if you have orders, I'll take them. So came back to work on Monday over in Germany, and he had orders for me.
Nice.
Chapter 2. So chapter 2 begins September 9th, 2001. 2 days before the towers got whacked.
Yeah.
Check into Buds as an instructor. And then 2 days later, the towers got hit.
What was that like for you?
It was interesting what immediately happened, we're watching it on TV. We see the first tower get hit. We're like, what a moron. Thinking that it was a private jet, some moron crashed, lost control. Because I don't know if everybody, you know, whether you remember all that. Nobody knew what was going on.
Yeah, no, I remember watching it. I was like, what the heck?
And the second one, when it hit, you could have heard a mouse fart. Silence. We all went to the armory, got weapons, and stood on the top of the buildings at the SEAL training without any authority to do it. We're like, man, we're at war. We better do what we need to do.
Right.
And so for the first 24 hours, we did watch with guns. And then our skipper, a guy named Rick Smithers, came out and said, all right, here's the deal. None of you can go back to the SEAL teams. Stop asking. We're in the business of training warriors. What do you need from me? I'm like, oh my God, a boss just asked what we need from him as opposed to telling us what he needs from us, you know? And we're like, take the gloves off. He goes, okay. I'm like, oh my God. So I was a 3rd phase instructor. And I was in charge of weapons, and that was my charge at the time. I ended up LPO after 3 years. So for 3 years, trained everybody going to war, which was a delight. Probably the best experience I've ever had in my life is being responsible for people going to combat, at least at the basic level. The kids were awesome. The staff was awesome. And life was great. And ends chapter 2 with a divorce. So after all that, my wife is like, I'm out. I'm like, God, because I get committed. You know, the problem with being committed and never quitting is that you get siloed, and I was never home. Right. And so she leaves, and trying to figure out what the fuck am I going to do? I have 2 kids. Got to share that. How am I going to go back to the teams? And the SEAL teams don't let you train operationally for 6 months after a divorce, because
that's really smart.
like you'll get yourself killed or you're going to get everybody
Mhm.
else killed. So take 6 months off. So I stayed at Bud's for a while,
Mhm.
and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go back. Never thinking I would get remarried. 'Cause who the hell would marry a SEAL with 2 kids that is never around? And apropos of the whole thing, I met a girl on the main street in Coronado at the Starbucks there. I don't own
Okay.
stock in Starbucks, but hey, it's a good place to meet chicks, you know. And so I met my wife Stacy, my future wife there, and
Right.
and then we got married and had a kid. And so begins chapter 3. I went back to
Oh,
SEAL Team
wow.
7 as a LPO of a platoon. I immediately put on chief because of my rank. And I'm like, damn, I
Mhm.
want to be LPO. I don't want to put on the rank. I want to be in charge as opposed to a second chief. So I went on a Iraqi deployment in 2007, and it was real combat. I'm like, the stuff we did in
Yeah.
Kosovo was combat but fake. But these guys, I mean, we're going out the door 58 times in 6 months,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, okay, this is real. But it was cool going out with everybody that I'd trained. Like a majority of the guys that are in the platoons were guys that I'd put through buds. So I had somewhat of a relationship with them.
That's a crazy, like, 360 life through like
Yep.
a whole 360. You trained all these guys, now they're out there, and now you're with them,
Yep.
fighting alongside them. And what's that like? It must be such of a sense of accomplishment for
Wonderful
you.
because you immediately have a rapport with them, unless you're an asshole
Right.
instructor. And I don't think I was. Maybe I was, but uh, um, they, I respected them, so it was an immediate boost to, if you're going to lead, if you don't respect them, if they find out very quickly.
Yeah.
And so halfway through that deployment, they kind of relieved the other platoon chief, and I took over, which was cool. And I got to retain that same platoon as a platoon chief when we got back. It may not mean anything to your
Oh,
listeners, but it's a big deal to do it twice.
yeah.
And we weren't, so probably chapter 4, picking up a SEAL platoon as a chief, probably the height of tactical leadership in the military is a platoon chief in the SEAL teams, because you're
Oh, I
the
bet.
bottom line.
Mhm.
Everything that happens is because of you. If it's bad, it's because you're fucked up. If it's good, it's because you're good. And we were originally supposed to go to the Philippines. And I'm like, oh, how do you lead people in a drunken bar fest that is the
Mhm.
Philippines? While everybody else is going to combat, we're going to the Philippines. A month before that deployment, so we heard in January of 2009,
Mhm.
we are going to go to Afghanistan instead. Philippines and Afghanistan is like comparing apples to dogs.
Yeah,
What?
different.
I'm like, we're not ready for that. Like Jocko Willink, that
Yeah.
the famous dude now, he was in
Yeah.
charge of training, and he goes, you and this other platoon are the only platoons I recommend going.
Oh,
And our
wow.
skipper goes, okay. So another platoon that we'd not worked up with, we're now going to go on a 6-month really heavy combat deployment. And
Oh,
so we spent the last couple months getting to know each other, and we went to Utah to train in the winter and high altitude and just cold as hell. And then we go on the deployment to Afghanistan in 2009,
mhm.
which is probably, I thought was going to be the last chapter. And we had the quintessential combat deployment where the general said, I just want a body count. I don't want you to partner with
Whoa.
anybody. You're not training. You're not doing FID. Here's TF 160. Here's 3 helos assigned to you. Go. And we weren't there 3 days and we're already in firefights.
Fuck, what was that like? What was there? Just the mission was just, hey, I want to just hurt them and
Yep.
put a real bad whooping on them and make them think twice, type of
Yeah,
thing.
because it was, 2009, it became the Wild Wild West again. Because
Right.
there was after between 2005 and 8, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was bad, but then they started putting roadside bombs everywhere, and then
Right.
Marines were dying and Army troops were dying, and we're like, well, let's call back the people we don't really want here because SEALs just break things, and we've been kicked out of Afghanistan until then.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so let's bring them back in, which okay, and they really took the gloves off. They're like, go after the Akani family and drugs and go for it, and great combat deployment. And I ended up unintentionally, I had written letters home to my wife about what I was going through as a leader, as a dad, as a husband, as a man, and as a, all that nightmare that is combat, that she ended up making into a book. And when I retired, she got this book passed through the SEAL teams and became a bestseller, not because I knew what the fuck I was writing about or had any intent to be public. But it culminated about 4 months in. We did we hit a target that went bad.
Okay.
And I mean bad. So the problem with winning in combat is you think you can always win.
Right.
And so we took down this target, north central Afghanistan, that we knew that there were 58 Taliban there.
That's a lot.
And there's 60 of us. Shit, we got, 60 rounds apiece. We can overwhelm them, which we did. And,
Right.
but on insert until we were extracted 2 days later, everything possibly bad happened.
Oh shit.
The first night, which is the worst thing you could ever have happen, is we got overwhelmed.
Uh-oh.
And 45-minute firefight. I remember it viscerally. I had taken my body armor off and I was chilling out because it's about an hour before dark, and the bosses had told us, hey, we're going to pull you out this night instead of making you stay. The worst thing you can do as a leader is take a wrap off. And I'm like, okay. Once I calmed, I stopped paying attention. Everybody else stopped paying attention. And took my body armor off. I'm sitting with my back against the wall, looking at this hilltop. And I remember looking up going, why the hell are there red bees flying at us? And I ducked my head and all these tracer rounds hit right by my head. And I'm like, oh shit, now I don't have
red
body
bees?
armor. Well, it looked like, because you can, if you're paying attention, tracer rounds look red.
Yes, absolutely. I just think it's funny that you're like, bees.
Well, I mean, I wasn't processing life, man. I was about ready to go home. I could talk to my wife on, internet again, blah, blah, blah. And so I roll away from the wall and I look back and they're following me. I'm like, damn, dude. So I jump up through this open window. And not that I'm good at parkour, but I remember putting my hands on the window frame and jumping through the window. And I didn't know an RPG hit right behind me on the frame, and it blew me about 20 feet to the back of the room. And bro, I had an existential crisis. I hit the wall hard without body armor or helmet, and I'm laying on the ground. And maybe this audience can understand. I just said, fuck, I'm dead. Cause I couldn't move. And I could move my head around. I could hear everything and see everything, but my body was like, bro, you're dying, bro. And
got hit by an RPG.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't wounded. In hindsight, I wouldn't. At the time, I was like, most peaceful experience I ever had. Okay, this is it. It's over. And like the world started going like this, and it would open up again, and I'd feel like the tunnel got tighter. And I'm like, man, I must be hit. Maybe I got the wind knocked out of me. I have no idea. I'm laying on the ground, admitting defeat. And I remember in those moments thinking, okay, man, somebody else is going to walk my daughter down the aisle. I'm never going to see my wife again. And my son's going to go on without me. And woe is me was the big conversation. Like, oh, look how pitiful I am. And in the middle of that, it's all fake. It's going on in my head. My wife jumps on me. Like, I'm like, what the hell is she doing here? And she grabs my face and says, "Don't fear dying. It makes you weak. Fight your way home." And I remember sitting up going, what in the hell? Like, it could have been 6 hours. I have no idea how long that took. So I rallied and got my body armor on, got my helmet, got my gun, turned my radio on. And in my haste, I'd turned to the wrong channel, and I'm trying to make comms and nobody's communicating back. I'm like, dude, I'm the only one left. And RPGs are hitting like crazy outside.
Oh, wow.
And I look at the window and I'm like, oh man, that thing's blown up. I went over next to it to see if I could see out into the compound and look out. And I don't hear any of my guys. But rounds are hitting everywhere and a big RPG hits. So I'm like, man, this is it, coming down to the end. And I poke my head out a little bit and one round hits right next to my eye. And I'm like, okay, there's a sniper. And I'm like, man, I'm a sniper. I'm not going to sit here and let this guy beat me. And I hold up a box to figure out where he is. I want him to shoot this box. Then I'll pin him down. So he shoots right through the box. And I'm like, man, he's on that hilltop. And so I get a blanket.
Get a bead.
I get a blanket, put it over me, poke my barrel through the blanket, and I'm trying to find this hilltop. I find it. I'm looking 638 yards away, and I have a Scar Heavy. I don't know if you know the weapon, and I know it'll hit it. And I finally get to the point where if I move too far further, the sun will hit me or the blanket. So I poke out into the sun. I see his head, squeeze the trigger, and a round hits me right in the head. And that hurt. The hit in the wall did not hurt. That bullet hitting my helmet, I'm like, it went right through my head and it knocked my helmet off. I put my hand up going, man, the blood's going to be spewing everywhere. And I pull my hand away. I'm like, oh shit, I'm not hit. And the scariest moment was realizing, man, I have to do it again, because that's the only place in this room that I can see that. So I put my helmet back on, squirt back out there into the light. I see his body, shoot around, totally miss him, shoot another round, totally miss him. Then my brain is processing it better, and there's blood all over the rocks behind him. And I remember standing up in the room, shaking like a young kid first time he shot a deer. I'm like, man, I've never felt this, like everything was shaking. And then a RPG hits the roof above me and blows the roof open. I look up, and my two snipers that were up there midair. I'm like, oh shit, they're dead. A guy named Mike falls to the outside of the compound. A guy named Caleb falls to the inside. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is bad. Yeah. I went over to the door and I see Caleb laying on the ground. I'm like, dude, I know his girlfriend. I can't sit here and say I just did nothing. And I remember saying out loud, bye, Stacy. And I ran out, grabbed Caleb, a 220-pound guy. Ain't like the movies. You don't pick him up over your shoulder. You drag him like it's 1,000 pounds. Get him into the room. And he opens his eyes. And he said, Chief, we're fucked. They're everywhere. I'm like, dude, where's your weapon? He goes, it's exploded. So I gave him my pistol. And I'm like, Caleb, you and I are going to fight till we're dead. That's all I can say. And he goes, oh, okay. Like, he was panicky until I said, all right, it's just you and me. We're going to fight until we die.
It kind of sounds like almost something like that was ingrained, going back to buds and going back to everything, breaking it down to the most simple instructions and mission. Yep. You broke it down so simple. He's like, cool, I got a mission, a problem to work. Yep. Let's work it.
I can do that, but I can't process 38 Taliban within 100 yards, And he'd said that to me. I'm like, 38, bro. And I couldn't. I'm like, well, we know if they capture us, we're screwed. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so we rallied. We found the other 6 guys that were there, and they were not processing things either. And they're like, Chief, we're pinned down. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, there's Taliban in the compound. I'm like, what do you mean? They turned me around. I'm like, the dead bodies in compound. I'm like, oh my God, we're screwed. And I'm like, all right, here's the deal. You two get all the grenades. You're going to throw grenade because now everybody's out of rounds. Right. You two get all the grenades. You're going to throw grenades. The other 2 guys get the 40 millimeter, grenade launchers. Mm-hmm. And I remember giving one of my bandoliers to one of the guys, and that's what you do. And Mike comes walking into the room, having fallen outside, covered in blood. Mm-hmm. And he said, what the hell are you guys doing in here? I'm like, Mike, you're hit. He goes, I'm not hit. I killed 2 Taliban with my Spyderco. I'm like, dude, that's a cool story, but we're rallying here, bro.
Oh my gosh.
So Mike and I and my warrant officer, now we're launched. So we're going to go back into the battle with some easy shit to do. And Mike and I and warrant launched 37 60 millimeter mortars. And everybody, now we shot our load. We have nothing left.
Right.
We call a B-1 bomber on, and there's 38 Taliban within 100 yards of us. And I ordered him to drop a 2,000-pound bomb on our position. And he launches it. He offset it, thank God. And so it destroys all the Taliban, doesn't kill us. And
wow.
For some reason, they put myself and another guy in for the Silver Star, and I got it awarded, and so did the other guy, for not dying. I call it the not dying award.
I mean, you break it down so simple. Like, we just didn't die. There was so much more to that whole thing. To just not dying. That just even though you couldn't remember like certain things, you're having a hard time getting, because understandably you just got your bell rung. Yep. By a freaking RPG, you got hit in the head with a round. I mean, you're probably concussed. Most of your guys are probably concussed.
Oh yeah.
So it's hard to try to fight through that brain fog, but you guys are able to overcome that, fight through the brain fog, call in an airstrike, danger close, with a bomber group, and have them bomb your location so that you can survive, and you got everybody out of there safely. I mean, there's so much more to that, but yeah, I mean, it's just so. You're so humble breaking it down. You're like, oh, we just didn't die.
Well, the first time I had to tell the story, it was a lot of crying involved.
I bet.
Man, I don't want to recall this. 10 years later, I'm able to deal with it.
So your gentleman, your teammate that flew on the inside, he was okay, but the gentleman who flew who got blown up off the outside, he didn't make it back.
No, that was Mike. So he came in covered in blood. And
so he both got blown off.
Yeah, he fell on the outside of the compound, and he didn't have a weapon, and there were Taliban there. So he ended up killing him with his knife, and then came running back in. And he's like, they're everywhere, boss. I'm like, I know they're everywhere, but you and I are going to shoot the 60 millimeter. And he goes, okay. And guys were throwing grenades over, and guys were shooting 40 Mike up in the air because we had to get over the wall. And I remember it was a surreal experience looking at everybody going, man, this is fun, because we're going to run out of rounds very shortly. Yeah. So it was a 45-minute firefight. Wow. And we were totally out of, it took us probably a day to be able to talk about it in detail, because we were concussed.
Yeah.
Like I was like, if you were to let me get out, I was out. If there was a flight home, I'm like, fuck this, I'm done, dude. Mm-hmm. And, our bosses that were watching it on Kill TV let us take a week and a half off. Like, don't do anything. Don't plan missions, just recover. And at the end of it, we'll decide if we're staying or going. So that was the hardest time, was figuring out if I wanted to stay. Like, we got to stay. At the end, I'm like, we got to stay. If you want to go home, you can go home. But if you're going to stay, we're going back in. And we had 2.5 months left.
Well, let me guess, those 2.5 months were jam packed with action.
Yeah, you got to stay busy, otherwise you cripple yourself. But
Yeah.
we didn't make any mistakes at the end. Like we're
Oh,
gonna
I bet you.
everybody on target is a bad guy, by the way. Yep, everybody's bad. Don't come to me with any
Yep.
details. Just we're gonna
Yep.
we're gonna
Wow.
survive this.
Yeah, we're making it home. I don't care
Yep.
what we have to do,
We're
but
going
we're going to
home.
do it.
Yep.
And everyone's bad and everyone's armed.
Yep.
There we go. Wow. So you turned that into, you turned your Navy SEAL experience and your career in the Navy SEALs and part of these experiences into a business to lead people, correct?
Yeah. Well, I didn't intend that. So I didn't intend to write the book either. In the last year, so after that deployment, so maybe chapter 6, whatever chapter we're on, after that deployment, I was in charge of our sniper course. So I taught that for 2 years.
Okay.
And I was about to pick up Master Chief and I had to make the choice. Do I stay in for 30 or do I get out? And I'm like, you know what? You're never going to have that experience again. And Master Chiefs don't carry guns. I'm like, I'm going to get out on top.
Okay.
And so my wife, Stacy, and I, and the 3 kids, let's get out. She goes, well, if you're going to get out, why don't you make all the notes home into a manuscript? So I wrote a book to my kids. It was originally titled Spartan Woman. And she got it authorized through the military to print without my approval. And then I retired in 2014. She's like, hey, Thom, our book is on the New York Times bestseller list. I'm like, what do you mean, what book?
Whoa.
So I was looking at on my phone, up the title Spartan Woman. And I'm like, there's no Spartan Woman. She goes, no, it's called Unbreakable. I'm like, what the fuck? So the book hit. It was a really visceral experience about combat through the eyes of somebody in combat, trying to be a dad, trying to be a father, trying to be a husband, trying to be a leader, and trying to keep all shit in one sock. And for some reason it did well. And I got the capacity to tell the story about leadership through my eyes. And a couple leaders said, hey, can you develop a curriculum to teach that? I'm like, I don't know if I can. I don't know what's learnable. I know I could share stories, but I don't know what I could share that's learnable. So in the first year in 2014, I put together a curriculum to teach leaders how to process complex things and make them simple. And to date, I've trained 580 leaders across the globe, several South African guys and European guys, and made a business out of it.
Wow. And is this did like corporate companies or military like contracts through the military where you come in and teach high level guys and special operations or in just leadership in general?
Just businesses, not affiliated with any government contract whatsoever.
Wow.
Like I said, once you played in the Super Bowl, contracting is I didn't want to contract. I didn't want to go do security for some company, and I didn't want to teach other people, what I'd learned tactically. And so I separated wholesale. Yeah.
Wow, that's really good. But now you're able to teach the leadership aside from the tactical, because we don't want people to know our tactics and stuff like that, which is smart. But you're able to teach that leadership, and that's something that I see a lot more of this going on, where you have special forces operators that were in big leadership roles come out and teach people and involved in corporate atmospheres, because it teaches them a different level of leadership. It teaches them how to motivate. It teaches them how to break things down and make things digestible. And I think that's so great, because I definitely think that so many people in the corporate community and the corporate world lack in leadership, and because they don't know how to lead, or they haven't had very many good leaders. They've only had poor leaders, or they just don't have the experience under their belt to know how to lead. And this gives them so much of that, and so many of your life experiences and things like that you've done. I mean, that's amazing. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I
And
don't know. From an admiral or a captain or a colonel or general point of view, I don't know that type of leadership. That's kind of disassociated leaders that are strategic, and I'm sure there's a place for that. I just have no experience with that. But one thing the teams showed me is the people side of the equation,
Right.
which is, true leadership is that the people count.
Yeah.
And I'm able to give leaders and corporations experiences through training that allow them to take the people side of the equation. And always makes a difference. You got
Right.
10 people functioning as one, you're a lethal company, as opposed to a bunch of, single alphas that are doing their own thing and you're prospering by that. I don't know how to lead at that level.
Right. So for everyone listening, is there one thing of advice you could give to up and coming leaders or people who are aspired to be leaders? One of the most important things you think you could impart on them? Do you have anything that you could give them?
Wasn't that the $50,000 question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I learned in the teams, there's 5 areas of life that count and they're not negotiable. And it's not expressly talked about. It's just, you do it. And here's the 5 things. Your health counts. As an employee or a leader, if you're a fat, miserable slob, you are not going to operate very effectively over time. The other thing that counts is you have to be with the right person at home. You have to be in the teams. If you're not, that's why the divorce rate is so high.
Yeah.
If you're dysfunctional at home, they'll just kick you the fuck out. Like if you're with a woman that drains your energy, see ya. So instead of seeing you, people just get divorced because they don't know how to solve it.
Right.
And then in business is do something that you enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy it, if you're just doing it for the money, you're going to fuck it up anyway. So if you don't enjoy it up front, don't do it. Like if you're working at McDonald's, enjoy it, man. It's not supposed to be forever. Put everything you can into your job every single day you go to work. Like it's in the teams, it's called sharpening your knife every day. Nobody cares what you did yesterday. Today's the only thing that matters. And that is a learnable skill at work. No matter what work you do, enjoy it or get a job that you do enjoy. The other one is be a consummate learner. Don't be so fucking smart that you think you know everything.
Right.
Somebody's better at you. Let them be better, dude. Don't put them down for them being smarter. And I wasn't a big fan of it until I saw combat. Spiritual. There's a purpose for shit.
Yeah.
And get in alignment with it. And that's even though it sounds not a learnable skill, it's a learnable skill. So it didn't sound like 5 areas. So health, relationships, intellectual capacity, wealth, and spiritual, those 5 areas are the only things that matter in your life.
That's
and
amazing.
Attend to them every single day.
Yeah.
And when you do that, things work out. Most people don't. They work too hard. They don't attend their marriage or their girlfriend or boyfriend, or they're with the wrong person. And most business leaders are not healthy. Therefore, the company's not healthy. Imagine everybody being healthy. Attend it every day. Pay people.
Kill it. Yeah.
Pay people to be healthy, because you're going to pay for them not to be healthy. You might as well pay for them to be healthy.
Yeah.
And,
increases morale, increases work productivity, and increases overall sense of well-being where you work and a sense of accomplishment and sense of ownership. Yeah, absolutely.
My company wants me to be healthy. My boss wants me to be healthy.
They must care about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how caring is felt by people demanding you be the best that you can be.
I love that. I love that leadership take on it. And I love something that you said also is, one, loving what you do, because that's really fucking important, or at least the job that you're in, love what you're doing. You might not have to like the area that what you're doing, but do the best you can at that position and strive to be the best you can and do everything that you can every day to be the best at it. And it's kind of this weird, the what you just said is a lot of the things as I, as a leader, take into myself, and to try to look and reflect back on that. Like, am I learning something every day? Am I a sponge?
Yep.
Am I being a sponge? With something you said, let that other person be better than you. Yeah, absolutely. Let them be better. Learn from that. Learn from your mistakes. Yep. I'm a firm believer in baptism by fire. And I think that if you're going to get yourself into a situation, you can get yourself out of that situation. It's going to help you tenfold down the road because it's going to teach you what not to do, what to do, and how to get done in a timely manner and how not to make that mistake again. So I think that some of these things that you're saying are so important. And to be quite honest, for me, I'm like, oh, that's just like a normal way of leading. I came through the military, went into law enforcement, had a lot of responsibility there, but so many other people that are going through, college and things like that and have regular jobs, they don't ever learn any of this. It's crazy. They just don't learn it.
Yeah. It's not a trite phrase. The only reason that you're in a company, it seems like bottom line, but nobody gives a shit about bottom line. Nobody really cares. How do you affect the bottom and top line? Is get the right people. Mm-hmm. Get the right people in the right seats on the right bus. Don't hire emotionally. Don't get, people that are in conflict with you. Mm-hmm. And, the truth about conflict in a business, the reason why business fucked up is the boss is screwed up. Mm-hmm. If the boss isn't screwed up, the company flourishes. And that is a truth, even in the SEAL teams. Not every leader in the SEAL teams is awesome. But when a bad leader is there, everybody sucks. Right. Everybody diminishes their quality of, performance. And view people as the business. Yeah. And you will be rewarded tenfold every single time. I've never seen it not be that case. You may have to get rid of a lot of people, though. Yeah. You may have to get rid of everybody who's not in it. Right. It's okay. Help them find something they want to do. It ain't here, bro. Right.
Yeah. Have those heart to hearts and be like, hey, you're employee to me, but at the same time, you're not in it. This is what's going on. We got to get you with it. And if not, we're going to have to find you a different position so that you can excel there because you're not excelling here. And, though I think a lot of those hard conversations people aren't having. And, and another thing you said too is, and I kind of want to, because we're getting close to time, is, not treating everybody like a number, treating them like a human, treating them like a person, treating them as the business, they're not just a number on a piece of paper. I mean, they are, but they're not, right? They have families, they have feelings, they have thoughts, they're human, right? They're not just a name on a spreadsheet. You know what I mean? And I think once people really see that in their leader, they're like, oh, they care about us. They give a shit. And they're going to try harder to please.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know. So I obviously I grew up in the military. So I have the experience that people are the center of everything. Technology comes and goes, equipment comes and goes. The market goes up and down. Some of this shit you can't control. But through the military, which I still think is a great experience for anybody, after the first 2 years in the military suck for everybody, because you're at the bottom, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But does it matter to a business that you let somebody go home because their kids need them? Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it does.
I don't care if it's in the middle of something. He's not here anyway, or she's not here anyway. Yeah. They're having issues with their family. That's your job as the boss, is to help. Yeah. Making them work harder for you doesn't support much.
No,
high attrition is based on, I don't count to my company. So I'm going to find a place where I feel like I could fit in.
100%.
So, and you learn that in the military. By a lot of bad demonstrations, but then you get a good one. You're like, dude, I'll do anything for him because he'd do anything for me. And then you're operating at 90% your capacity. I don't know what 100% is, but, being around people that operate at 30%, they just punch the clock. God dang, it's so draining.
It's fucking draining. I was
Ah,
about to say the
I can
same
get
thing. It's so
anybody to
draining.
do that, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fucking draining. Working with a car with a beat partner like that, holy shit! I'd much
Yeah.
rather work with the person who's happy, upbeat, who gives a shit. Because the working with the person who's a sourpuss who doesn't want to do anything, it
Yep.
just makes your day that much longer. And it's just, oh my gosh. So
And
yeah,
it
there's
makes you
definitely
30%. I'm like, I can't rise
Mhm.
when you're that way. And then you
Yeah,
make
makes you shitty.
mistakes and then everything's catastrophic, especially
Yeah,
in law
it made
enforcement.
me 100%. It made me a shitty operator when I was out there operating, doing my law enforcement stuff. And, it's because you feed off the emotion. You
Yep.
know, if someone's happy, you vibe off it, you thrive off it, and you're happy. You have someone who's building you up, you feel better, and you have someone who's
100%.
actively breaking you down, you feel like they're tearing you down. And it's just a shitty thing. But
Yep.
as we get ready to close out this episode, I want to say thank you so much, Tom, for coming on. That was amazing. Your stories were holy crap. That was I want to read this book so bad because this
Mhm.
is freaking amazing. And we got what, chapter 6, and it's just crazy. And the thing is that you were almost writing this book just to your family, like just letting them know what's going on. And your wife, what, turns this into a New York Times bestseller?
Yep. Yep.
That's intense. That's wild. That's so amazing.
Yeah, I was one of those SEALs that hated SEALs that were public. Like, man, some others using the trident to make money, and then you get out and you're like, man, I don't know where I fit in. Maybe a good way to close is the retirement was harder than combat
Oh, I bet.
because I went from being important to nothing.
Yeah.
And you probably have transitioned from one to the other. You're like, damn, what do I do? And the civilian community is not very supportive. And I learned,
Not at
well,
all.
shit, I got to find 3 or 4 people that are not going to use me for something,
Mhm.
and get mentors that are looking out for you. And thank God I
Right.
found them. Without that, you fall apart. And, and learning how to take guidance, which was good from the military.
Mhm.
You got to find somebody on the outside that is good for you. And we found
Okay.
it very quickly. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, it seems like it's a big transition from military to civilian life. It's very difficult. It's very hard.
Yep.
Every single service member I've ever talked to has been like, that's so difficult. And then going from law enforcement to civilian life again is just, that's
Yeah.
another hurdle that guys are having to go to, especially when they did that from going from military to civilian, civilian to law enforcement to civilian life again. It's just a swift kick in the nuts. But what you said really reigns true. And find someone that that gets you and that supports you and believes in you. It's amazing.
Yep. It's the key.
Yeah. So as we get ready to close out the show, we always give our guests a chance to dedicate the episode to a fallen brother or sister. And do you have a fallen brother or sister you would like to dedicate this episode to?
I have a big list though, but I'm not laughing at that. A guy named Mike Tatham, he
Mhm.
was my point man in Afghanistan. He died on the next deployment, and let this be for he and his family.
Okay. Well, rest easy, brother. We've got it from here. I want to say thank you again so much, Tom, for coming on. Where can the guests reach you at if they want to go out and get this book? If they want to reach you out on the social medias, where can they reach you?
My website is thomshea.com, THOMSHEA.com. And all of our trainings and what we do is easily supported there. And I'm on social media everywhere, much to my dismay. And that's the easiest place to reach us. Yep.
Okay. And I'm sorry, did you already see where we can reach your book at?
So it's still on Amazon. It's a little old now. It's about 10 years old. Unbreakable: Navy SEAL's Way of Life. And my second book was called 3 Simple Things: Leading During Chaos. And they're on Amazon.
Okay, amazing. And I'm definitely going to be ordering these books because I think these are amazing. I think your outlook on leadership, on life is absolutely amazing. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on Instagram at war_stories_official and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. If you're already following, we really appreciate if you could share a post and help spread the word. You can also check us out in the link in our bio on both platforms to find all of our social media, our media links, and our website. Our podcast is available on all major streaming platforms, including YouTube. If you'd like to support us, please head over to our website at www.warstoriesofficial.com and grab some gear. Do you have a story to tell, or you know someone who does? We're always looking for law enforcement, corrections officers, dispatchers, firefighters, medics, and veterans, but also those ER doctors and ER nurses, because we know you guys have some crazy stories to be featured on the show. If you're interested, email us at booking.warstories@gmail.com and share your story. We'd love to have you on. If you know someone who would be a great fit, please send them our way. Again, thank you for the support. Stay safe. Thank you, Thom. Thank you so much for coming on. We so appreciate it. And honestly, I would love to have you back on to talk more about the rest of your book, the rest of some of your deployments, and what it's really like in retirement. If you would ever be willing to come back on and share some of that stuff. Love it. Okay, that'd be great. Yes, I will get connected with you in the near future.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
As always, come home with your shield or on it.